Hi, welcome to Meditate with Mel. I am Mel of Prairie Serenity Holistic Healing, and I am with you on Fridays to do your meditation and mindfulness. Today we are doing a recorded Zoom. So just make sure you have yourself comfortable. You can be relaxed on the floor with your pillow if you like. If it's more comfortable for you to be up against the wall or in a chair, you can do that as well. Just making sure you'll be in a comfortable position. We'll be here just a little over 45 minutes. So just adjusting, getting ready. So today is going to be a little bit different. Most of you know that I bring you in with a song. I do the guided portion of the meditation and then bring you back with a song. So we will be doing that. But during the guided portion today, I'm going to be reading you a story. The reason I am doing that is that reading is such an important part of the bonding when you're a child. And I realize that many don't get that, but it's an experience that helps you to regulate because you are with someone caring, telling you a story. You're empathizing and feeling through the story, so you're supported through that. You're maybe identifying with characters or that kind of thing, so it works on the empathy. And it also strengthens the part of your brain that's associated with visual imagery, story comprehension, and word meaning. It gives you a chance to experience emotions and the words used to describe them. And it's just a quiet time of regulating and bonding. So there's a feeling of safety as you relax in. And while I'm reading, it may remind you of somebody from your youth that maybe held you and read to you. And if that wasn't your experience, you will be experiencing it today for maybe the first time. And I hope that you just feel held and supported and loved through it. This story that I'm going to be doing today is actually called The Velveteen Rabbit. The story itself is about 100 years old. So there's some words in here that may sound older. It's an old English story, so it might not line up quite with how we would say it today, but the story has stood the test of time. So that's what we'll be doing today. So just get yourself situated. We're going to go into the first song, and we'll be just doing some slow down breathing while we experience that. So just settling in. Slow, deep breaths. For now, we're going to breathe in through the nose and exhale through the nose. Breathing into the count of 4 and out to the count of 6, just slowing it down.
No more secrets. Come as you are. All of it fits just right. Heart to heart. There's no tradition. Nothing by the book. All you need is courage. Have the strength to look. There's no more pretending. You can't measure in this room. Just walk through the doorway. Just follow the tune.
Slow, deep breath in.
I see a robe of patches.
Soft breath out.
It is perfectly arranged. Here
Slow breaths.
Pure absence without expectation. Let us share, don't be scared. Come on in, everything will be alright. Coming true for something new. Hey, what's to lose? All we gotta do is try. Let us share, don't be scared.
Settling into the space.
Everything will be alright. Coming true for something new. Hey, what's to lose? All we gotta do is try. Let us share, don't be scared. Come on in, everything will be alright. Coming true for something new. Hey, what's to lose? All we gotta do is try. Let us share, don't be scared. Come on in, everything will be alright. Coming true for something new. Hey, what's to lose? All we gotta do is try.
Settling in, finding that natural rhythm. Turning the breath now, breathing in through the nose, and on the exhale, just a soft exhale through the lips, just like you're blowing out a candle gently. So into 4, and blow that candle out to 6. Allowing yourself to just sink into the mat, allowing the ground to hold you. Keeping that slow breath going. And during the meditation, if your mind begins to wander, you can bring it back to the music, the sound of my voice, or to the words I'll be saying. Just making yourself comfortable, taking care of any final adjustments there. I'll do a quick walk through the body. I want you to picture yourself on a beautiful summer's day, and the sun is shining down on the top of your head. You breathe that gorgeous, vibrant sunshine down through the top of your head, breathing it into the space behind your eyes. And you can let your brows soften the corners of your eyes. And just let go of any tension you're holding there. And if closing your eyes is not comfortable for you, you can just find a spot on the ceiling or in the room, someplace, just with a soft, open-eyed gaze if that's more comfortable for you. And again, you can be laying down or sitting up, just with that straight spine. Moving our awareness down now to our jaw, letting any tension you're holding there go. And releasing the back of your neck, dropping those shoulders away from your ears. Just letting it go. Slow, deep breath in and a soft breath out. An audible sigh if you like. And just letting your mat hold all your weight. And just picturing that warm, vibrant light as it fills your body from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. relaxing as it goes. If any place feels tight or heavy, just noticing the sensation and seeing if you can breathe a little light there. Breathing in light and breathing out anything that feels heavy or dense. And picturing your feet grounded down into Mother Earth as you draw up that grounded earth energy through the bottom of your feet. And feel that warm sunshine on the top of your head in natural flow, feeling in harmony in your natural state of relaxation. We're going to let ourselves journey to a place we call the garden of your heart, and just following your awareness to a place where you feel nurtured and safe. It can be a place that you've actually visited, childhood memory, a place you've always wanted to go to. Perhaps it's a movie or a fantasy location that just it's the feeling that we are chasing here. It's that feeling of being nurtured and safe. And just allowing the details of this place to come into your awareness and exploring it with all of your senses. And in this beautiful place, this garden of your heart, you find a comfortable spot to cocoon in, all nestled in, comfortable, tucked in warm. And just doing one more check on the body, allowing those shoulders to drop. And just entering that space where you're relaxed and receiving, but not sleeping. And I'll begin to read The Velveteen Rabbit, a story over a century old about a young boy, his rabbit. And I hope you feel safe and held. Nothing to do, nowhere to be, just allowing yourself this time of nurturing. There once was a Velveteen rabbit, and in the beginning, he was really splendid. He was fat and bunchy as a rabbit should be. His coat was spotted brown and white, and he had real thread whiskers, and his ears were lined with pink satin. On Christmas morning, when he sat wedged atop the boy's stocking, he had a sprig of holly between his paws, and the effect was so charming. There were other things in the stocking. There were nuts and oranges, and a toy engine, and chocolate almonds, and a clockwork mouse. But the rabbit was quite the best of all. For at least 2 hours, the boy played and loved him. And then the aunts and uncles came to dinner, and there was a great rustling. There was tissue paper and unwrapping of parcels, and in the excitement of looking at all the new presents, the Velveteen Rabbit was forgotten. For a long time, he lived in the toy cupboard or on the nursery floor, and no one thought very much about him. He was naturally shy, and being only made of velveteen, some of the more expensive toys quite snubbed him. The mechanical toys were very superior and looked down upon everyone else. They were full of modern ideas and pretended that they were real. The model boat, who had lived through 2 seasons and lost most of his paint, caught the tone from them, and never missed an opportunity of referring to his rigging in technical terms. The rabbit could not claim to be a model of anything, for he didn't even know that real rabbits existed. He thought that they were all stuffed with sawdust, just like himself. And he understood that sawdust was quite out of date and should never be mentioned in the modern circles. Even Timothy, the jointed wooden lion, who was made by disabled soldiers and should have had broader views, put on airs, and he pretended that he had connections to the government. Between them all, very poor little rabbit was made to feel himself quite insignificant and common, and the only person who was kind to him at all was the horse. The horse had lived there in the nursery longer than any of the others. He was so old that his brown coat was bald in patches, and it showed the seams underneath, and most of the hairs on his tail had been pulled out to string bead necklaces. He was wise, for he had seen a long succession of mechanical toys arrive and boast and swagger, and by break their mainsprings, and he knew that they were only toys and would never turn into anything else. For nursery magic is a very strange and wonderful thing, and only those playthings that are old and wise and experienced like the horse understand anything about it. "What is real?" asked the rabbit one day when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came in to tidy up the room. "Does it mean having things that buzz and stick out like handles?" "Real isn't how you are made," said the horse. "It's a thing that happens to you. When a child really loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real." "Does it hurt?" asked the rabbit. "Sometimes," said the horse, for he always was truthful. "When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. It doesn't happen all at once, like being wound up. It happens bit by bit. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily or have sharp edges or who have been very carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been lopped off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints and quite shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to the people who don't understand." "I suppose you are real," said the rabbit, and then he wished he had not said that, for he thought the horse might be sensitive. But the horse only smiled. "The boy's uncle made me real," he said. "That was a great many years ago. But once you are real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts for always." The rabbit sighed. He thought it would be a very long time before this magic called real happened to him. He longed to become real, to know what it felt like, and yet the idea of growing shabby and losing his eyes and whiskers made him feel rather sad. He wished that he could become without these uncomfortable things happening to him. There was a person called Nana who ruled the nursery. Sometimes she took no notice of the playthings lying about, and sometimes for no reason whatsoever she went swooping around like a great wind and hustled them away into cupboards. She called this thing tidying up, and the playthings all hated it, especially the tin ones. The rabbit didn't mind so much, for wherever he was thrown, he came down quite soft. One evening when the boy was going to bed, he couldn't find the china dog that always slept with him. Nana was in a hurry, and it was too much trouble to hunt for the china dogs at bedtime. So she simply looked about, and seeing that toy cupboard door open, she made a swoop. "Here," she said, "take your old bunny. He'll do to sleep with you tonight." And then she dragged the rabbit out by one ear and put him in the boy's arms. That night, and for many nights after, the Velveteen Rabbit slept in the boy's bed. At first he found it rather uncomfortable, for the boy hugged him so very tight, and sometimes he rolled over on him, and sometimes he pushed him so far under the pillow that the rabbit could scarcely breathe. And he missed, too, those long moonlight hours in the nursery when all the house was silent, and his talks with the horse. But very soon he grew to like it, for the boy used to talk to him and make nice tunnels for him under the bedclothes that he said were like the burrows that the real rabbits lived in. And they had splendid games together in whispers when Nana had gone away and left the night light burning on the mantelpiece. And when the boy dropped off to sleep, the rabbit would snuggle down close under his warm little chin and dream, with the boy's hands clasped close around him all night long. And so time went on, and the little rabbit was very happy. So happy that he never noticed how his beautiful velveteen fur was getting shabbier and shabbier, and that his tail was becoming unsewn, and that all the pink had rubbed off his nose where the boy had kissed him. Spring came, and they had long days in the garden, for wherever the boy went, the rabbit went too. He had rides in the wheelbarrow and picnics on the grass, and the lovely fairy huts built for him under the raspberry canes behind the flower border. And once, when the boy was called away suddenly to go out to tea, the rabbit was left on the lawn long after dusk. Nana had come and looked for him with a candle because the boy couldn't go to sleep unless he was there. He was wet with the dew and quite earthly from diving into the burrows the boy had made for him in the flower bed. Nana grumbled. She rubbed him off with the corner of her apron. "You must have your old bunny," she said. "Fancy all that fuss for a toy." The boy sat up in bed and stretched out his hands, and he said, "Give me my bunny." "You mustn't say that. He isn't a toy. He is real." And when the little rabbit heard that, he was so happy, for he knew that what the horse had said to him was true at last, that the nursery magic had happened to him, and he was a toy no longer. He was real. The boy himself had said it. That night he was almost too happy to sleep, and so much love stirred in his little sawdust heart that it almost burst. And into his boot-button eyes that had long ago lost their polish, there came a look of wisdom and beauty, so that even Nana noticed it the next morning when she picked him up. She said, "I declare if that old buddy hasn't got quite the knowing expression." It was a wonderful summer. Near the house where they lived, there was a wood, and in the long June evenings, the boy liked to go there after tea to play. He took the Velveteen Rabbit with him, and before he wandered off to pick flowers or play among the trees, he always made the rabbit a little nest somewhere in the bracken, where he would be quite cozy, for he was a kind-hearted little boy, and he liked the bunny to be comfortable. One evening, while the rabbit was lying there all alone, watching the ants that ran to and fro between his velvet paws in the grass, he saw two strange beings creep out of the tall bracken near him. They were rabbits, like himself, but quite furry and brand new. They must have been very well made, for their seams didn't show at all. And they changed shape in such strange ways when they moved. One minute they were long and thin, and the next minute they were fat and bunchy, instead of always staying the same like he did. Their feet were padded softly. They kept them on the ground, and they crept quite close to him, twitching their noses while the rabbit stared. It was hard to see where the clockwork stuck out, for he knew that people who jumped generally had something to wind them up. But he couldn't see it. They were evidently a new kind of rabbit altogether. They stared at him, and the little rabbit stared back. And all the time their noses twitched. "Why don't you get up and play with us?" one of them asked. "I don't feel like it," said the rabbit, for he didn't want to explain that he had no clockworks. "Oh," said the furry rabbit, "it's an easy thing." And then he gave a big hop sideways, and he stood on his hind legs. "I don't believe you can," he said. "I can," said the little rabbit. "I can jump higher than anything." He meant when the boy threw him, but of course he didn't want to say so. "Can you hop on your hind legs?" asked the furry rabbit. That was a dreadful question for the Velveteen rabbit, because he had no hind legs at all. The back of him was made all in one piece, just like a pin cushion. He sat still in the bracken, and he hoped that the other rabbits wouldn't notice. "I don't want to," he said again, but the wild rabbits had very sharp eyes, and this one stretched out his neck, and he looked. He said, "He hasn't got any hind legs," he called out. "Fancy a rabbit without hind legs." And he began to laugh. "I have," cried the little rabbit. "I have got hind legs. I'm sitting on them." "Then stretch them out and show me like this," said the wild rabbit. And he began to whirl around and dance till the little rabbit got quite dizzy. "I don't like dancing," he said. "I'd rather just sit still." But all the while he was longing to dance, for a funny new tingly feeling ran through him, and he felt he would give anything in the world to be able to jump about like these rabbits did. The strange rabbit stopped dancing and came quite close. He came so close that this time his long whiskers brushed against the Velveteen rabbit's ear. And then he wiggled his nose, and suddenly he flattened his ears and he jumped backwards. "He doesn't smell right," he exclaimed. "He isn't a rabbit at all. He isn't real." "I am real," said the little rabbit. "I am real. The boy said so." And he nearly began to cry. Just then there was the sound of footsteps, and the boy ran past near them, and with a stamp of feet and a flash of white tails, the two strange rabbits disappeared. "Come back and play with me," called the little rabbit. "Oh, do come back. I know that I am real." But there was no answer. Only the little ants ran to and fro in the bracken, swayed gently where the two strangers had passed, and the Velveteen rabbit was all alone. "Oh dear," he thought, "why did they run away like that? Why couldn't they stop and talk to me?" For a long time he lay very still, watching the bracken, and hoped that they would come back, but they never did return. And then the sun sank lower, and the little white moths fluttered out, and the boy came and carried him back home. Weeks passed, and the little rabbit grew very old and shabby. But the boy loved him just as much. He loved him so hard that he loved all of his whiskers off, and the pink lining to his ears turned gray, and the brown spots faded. He even began to lose his shape, and he scarcely looked like a rabbit anymore, except to the boy. To him, he was always beautiful, and that was all the little rabbit cared about, because the nursery magic had made him real. And when you are real, shabbiness doesn't matter. And then one day, the boy became ill. His face grew very flushed, and he talked in his sleep, and his little body was so hot that it burnt up the rabbit when he held him so close. Strange people came and went. The nursery light burnt all night, and through it all the little Velveteen rabbit lay there, hidden from sight under the bedclothes, and he never stirred, for he was afraid that if they found him, someone might take him away, and he knew that that boy needed him. It was a long, weary time for the boy, who was too ill to play, and the little rabbit found it rather dull with nothing to do all day. But he snuggled down patiently and looked forward to the time when the boy would be well again. And they would go out in the garden amongst the flowers and the butterflies, and they'd play splendid games in the raspberry thicket, just like they used to. All sorts of delightful things he had planned, and while the boy lay half asleep, he crept up close to the pillow and he whispered them in his ear. And presently the fever turned, and the boy got better, and he was able to sit up in bed, and he looked at picture books. And while the little rabbit cuddled close at his side, one day they even let him get dressed and get out of bed. It was a bright, sunny morning, and the window stood wide open. And they carried the little boy out onto the balcony, wrapped him in a blanket, and the little rabbit lay tangled among the bedclothes, thinking. The boy was going to the seaside tomorrow. Everything was arranged, and now it only remained to carry out the doctor's orders. They had talked about it while the little rabbit lay under the bedclothes, and with just his head peeking out and listening. The room was to be disinfected, and all the books and toys that the boy had played with in bed must be burned. Hurrah, thought the little rabbit, tomorrow we will go to the seaside, for the boy had often talked about the seaside, and he wanted very much to see the big waves coming in, and the tiny crabs, and the sand castles. Just then, Nana caught sight of him. How about this old bunny? She asked. That, the doctor said. Why, it's a mass of germs. Burn it at once. What nonsense. Get him a new one. He mustn't have that one anymore. And so the little rabbit was put into a sack with the old picture books and a lot of garbage, and he was carried out to the end of the garden. That was a fine place to make the bonfire, only the gardener was too busy to attend to it. He had potatoes to dig and green peas to gather, but the next morning he promised to come quite early and burn the whole lot. That night the boy slept in a different bedroom, and he had a new bunny to sleep with him. It was a splendid bunny with all white plush and real glass eyes, but the boy was too excited to care very much about it, for tomorrow he was going to the seaside. And that in itself was a wonderful thing, and he could think of nothing else. And while the boy was asleep, dreaming of the seaside, the little rabbit lay amongst the old picture books in the corner, and he felt very lonely. The sack had been left untied, and so by wiggling a bit, he was able to get his head through the opening and have a peek out. He was shivering a little, for he had always been used to sleeping in a proper bed, and by this time his coat had worn so thin and threadbare from all the hugging that it was no longer any protection for him. Nearby he could see the raspberry canes growing tall, just like a tropical jungle, and in whose shadow he had played with the boy on bygone mornings. He thought of all those sunlit hours in the garden and how happy they were, and a great sadness came over him. He seemed to see them all pass before him, each more beautiful than the other. The fairy huts in the flower bed, the quiet evenings in the woods, when he lay in the bracken and the little ants ran over his paws, and the wonderful day when he first knew that he was real. And he thought of the horse, so wise and gentle, and all that he had told him. Of what use was it to be loved and lose one's beauty to become real if it all ended like this? A tear, a real tear, trickled down his shabby little velvet nose and fell to the ground. And then a strange thing happened. For where the tear had fallen, a flower grew out of the ground. A mysterious flower, not like any that grew in the garden. It had slender green leaves, the color of emeralds, and in the center of the leaves, a blossom like a golden cup. It was so beautiful that the little rabbit forgot to cry, and he just lay there watching it. And presently the blossom opened, and out stepped a little fairy. She was quite the loveliest fairy in the whole world. Her dress was made of pearls and dewdrops, and there were flowers around her neck and in her hair, and her face was like the most perfect flower of all. She came close to the little rabbit and gathered him up in her arms and kissed him on his velveteen nose that was all damp from crying. "Little rabbit," she said, "don't you know who I am?" The rabbit looked up at her, and it had seemed to him that he had seen her face before, but he couldn't think where. "I'm the nursery magic fairy," she said. "I take care of all the playthings that the children have loved. And when they are old and wore out, the children don't need them anymore. Then I come and take them away with me and turn them into real." "Wasn't I real before?" asked the little rabbit. "You were real to the boy," said the fairy, "because he loved you. Now you shall be real for everyone." She held the little rabbit close in her arms and flew with him into the woods. It was light now, for the moon had risen. All the forest was beautiful, and the bracken shone like frosted silver. In the open glade between the tree trunks, the wild rabbits danced in their shadows on the velvet grass. But then they saw the fairy, and they all stopped dancing, and they stood around in a ring to stare at her. "I've brought you a new playfellow," said the fairy. "You must be very kind to him and teach him all the needs to know in Rabbitland, for he's going to live with you forever and ever." She kissed the little rabbit again, and she put him down on the grass. "Run and play, little rabbit," she said. But the little rabbit sat quite still for a moment. He never moved, for when he saw the wild rabbits dancing around him, he suddenly remembered about his hind legs, and he didn't want them to see that he was made of all one piece. He did not know that when the fairy kissed him the last time, she had changed him altogether. He might have sat there a very long time, too shy to move, if just then something hadn't tickled his nose, and before he thought about it, he lifted his hind toe to scratch. He found that he actually had hind legs. Instead of dingy velveteen, he had soft brown fur, soft and shiny. His ears twitched by themselves, and his whiskers were so long that they brushed the grass. He gave one leap, and the joy of using those hind legs was so great that he went springing about the turf on them, jumping sideways and whirling around as the others did. And he grew so excited that when he last did stop to look for the fairy, she was gone. He was a real rabbit at last, at home with the other rabbits. Autumn passed, and winter, and the spring, and when the days grew warm and sunny, the boy went out to play in the woods behind the house. And while he was playing, two rabbits crept out from the bracken and they peered at him. One of them was brown all over, but the other had strange markings under his fur, as though long ago he had been spotted, and the spots still showed through. And his soft little nose and his round black eyes, there was something so familiar that the boy thought to himself, why, he looks just like my old bunny that was lost when I was sick. But he never knew that it really was his own little bunny, come back to look at the child who had first loved him and helped him to be real. Slow, deep breath in and a soft breath out. Just taking a moment here as we move to the final portion of the meditation. You can stretch out long or pull in tight. And just take another few minutes here, staying on your mat. Just taking time to be gentle with yourself. And going back to the awareness of the breath. Breathing into the count of 4 and out to the count of 6. You can either exhale through the nose, or you can do the blowing out the candle. Slow, soft exhale.
To create magic on earth. The power of love is here now.
You can
The power of now
hold
is here now.
Hold onto opposite shoulders with opposite hands, giving yourself a big hug. Just feeling those shoulders as a bilateral stimulation that helps your body slow down and regulate. And a gentle rocking, if you like. Slowing it down.
Let the water wash away your tears. Let the fire burn away your fears. Let the wind blow into your life such faith and trust. Oh, let the earth hold you, take care of you, and nurture you. Oh, the power of love is here now.
More slow, deep breaths. You can wiggle your fingers and your toes. Big stretch overhead. Letting your eyes flutter open. And when you are ready, you can return to the seated position on your mat. Notice the softness in your body and the slowness of your mind. I hope you felt held and supported and were able to relax in and enjoy your time.
Let the water wash away.
I will be with you every Friday. I will be returning soon and be in the center with you Until then, take care of yourself. Remember to be gentle with yourself. And have a remarkable rest of your day and a beautiful week. And I will see you next Friday.